Hello, welcome back to Spellbound. I'm BJ the Book Witch, and this is a recent romance reads wrap up. So in this video, I'll be talking about some recent romance releases from cozy to contemporary to dark to very dark. Now, if you would have told me 2-3 years ago that I would be making an entire video on the recent romances that I would have read, I would have said that you were mistaken and that you had the wrong book witch. I was a total romance hater. I was a total romance snob. I'll own it. I acknowledge it. Hashtag accountability. But yeah, once I started book blogging and really participating in the online book community, I learned very quickly that I needed to unpack that internalized misogyny that I had against romance as a genre. And now, romance is one of my favorite genres to read because they're such great palate cleansers. They're lighter, they're quicker, they're sometimes fluffy, sometimes dark, but I like to read them in between almost any other type of book, be it thriller, fantasy, horror, whatever, literary fiction, because it keeps me in the habit of reading while I am emotionally recovering from whatever nonfiction or literary fiction I have just processed, or just coming back down to earth from whatever fantasy world I have just been living in my most recent fantasy. So that's why I love romances. But even still, I don't usually read almost exclusively romances in an entire month like I did in the month of June. So why the change? Well, here's a bit of a life update. So in March, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid-centric autoimmune disease that has like fibromyalgia-like components and affects like major organ functions. So in short, my entire life has been flipped upside down, and I am much less able-bodied and even like capable of movement than I was even like a year ago. So my morale has been low. And as it turns out, in times of cozy and comfort, I reach for contemporary YA and romance. Specifically, in the past month, I have read almost 20 recent romance releases. And so this video is a wrap up of most of those, because some I cannot bring myself to actually talk about. Curvy Girls Can't Date Quarterbacks by Kelsie Stelting. So this book is about a curvy girl because we have not yet evolved to the point where we can say the word fat and have it not be an insult. So she is relentlessly bullied at school by these mean girls who are only described as being skinny and therefore pretty. And they're telling her that she'll never get a date, like literally ever, because she's fat. And so she responds in the most logical way by making a bet that she can actually get any boy in school to fall in love with her because her weight doesn't matter. Now, at first glance, I'm like, cool, bet, like, love this confidence. She must be, like, totally rocking in the self-esteem. She's not. She's the most self-deprecating character I have read in a really long time. She hates her body. She completely buys into the fact that she can't be pretty because she's overweight. So I'm all for thriving out of spite, like 100%, but that only works if you actually believe that you can do the thing. So this was just, like, wildly out of scope. So the popular pretty girls take her up on this absolutely asinine bet and name the star quarterback of the football team, who also just so happens to be the #1 crush of our protagonist. And then from the very first scene of their interaction, it is made very clear that the quarterback is already crazy about our protagonist, which makes the entire premise and therefore third act conflict extremely flimsy, because he already likes her and it's obvious. Also, our main character is diagnosed with PCOS at the beginning of the book, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and that is attributed to be the main and in fact only cause of her weight gain. She is otherwise extremely healthy, which 2 thumbs up for representation for our PCOS girlies. Like, we see you, we love you, we support you. But it also completely undermines the entire point and premise of this whole body positivity, like, club that she forms. Spoiler, sorry, she forms like a fat girls club because she uses the PCOS, the author uses the PCOS as the reason why she's fat. Otherwise, like, she wouldn't be fat if it weren't for the PCOS. And that's like the tone of the book. That's how the author represents it. That's how the main character sees it. That's how her mom sees it. That's how everyone in the book is just like apologizing for the fact that she's fat because she has PCOS. So, like, the writing is simplistic and it's shallow, and I truly cannot get behind a female protagonist whose body weight is their entire personality. Like, already really struggle bus to get through this book. But what kept me reading was, I was like, there's this one aspect of this book that I was like, surely they're gonna make this a big deal, right? Because it was the most interesting part of the book, and it was the fact that our protagonist's biggest bully was her mom. So her mom was constantly body shaming her throughout the entire book. She was restricting food. She was preparing dinner and giving the entire rest of the family a different dinner than what she was getting. She made her take multiple pregnancy tests in front of the family, didn't believe her when she said that she was still a virgin, and then also like went through this school to restrict her lunch food. She went through the lunch with her lunch tray to purchase with her own dollars, her own bucks, and the lunch lady confiscated her tray and like gave her an orange. And I was like, surely we're gonna deal with that, right? Like, surely. Okay, so spoiler again, because this is how the book resolves that subplot. So the mom knows that the daughter has PCOS. She knows that this is why she has all the weight gain. She knows that because she was at the doctor's appointment, like all the other doctor's appointments, with her daughter. Explain that to me. Don't know. She just was, and that wasn't questioned. So how the book resolves this is the mom takes the daughter to one of her doctor's appointments, and that's where she reveals to her daughter that actually she's been going to these secret doctor's appointments that the daughter didn't even know about since she was her daughter's age, and she has like chronic high blood pressure or something. I don't remember what like the medical thing was, but it wasn't PCOS, and it wasn't nearly as severe as PCOS. It was just, she just had something else. And so what's weird about that is that they really frames this up as this like true moment of vulnerability for the mom and connection, which does not make sense because there was no moment of vulnerability and connection for the daughter's part, because her privacy was already invaded from the get-go when the mom was at the doctor's with her and then forced her to take a pregnancy test. It's not like a moment of vulnerability for the mom because there was already a power imbalance there where like the mom already knew all about the girl's business. So that was already weird. Like there's no connection happening. It's just a choice at this point for the mom to reveal a secret that she's been keeping for no reason. But then also they frame it up as like this true like weepy emotional moment where the daughter's like, "Oh my God, mom, you have high blood pressure. Why didn't you tell me?" And the mom's like, "It was my burden to bear." The daughter, she's like, "Well, I guess I get it now. I know now why you have been body shaming me and hyper focusing on my health and it, like basically giving me an eating disorder. It's just because you have like health issues too." And the mom's like, "You get it. None of this is okay." Anyway, like the book ends in the most just dramatic way possible. She ends up on stage at one point in front of the entire school and is basically just like, "I'm fat because I have PCOS, and so if you're not nice to me because of that, then like basically you're a terrible person, and I'm starting a fat girls club and we eat cupcakes." Like, just girly things. Those are the vibes of the whole book. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. It is just one stream of conscious from like a girl who just really wants a reason to be fat so that everyone can stop being mean to her. And I rated it 1.5 stars. So now I want to shift gears and talk about some really good romances that I've read. I will go back to some more trash reads, like, yes, but I just wanted to like take a minute and like let's talk about what's really working in the romance world right now. And her name is Tessa Bailey, and she's fucking crushing it. So there's a lot out there in contemporary romance, even though all of the covers look absolutely identical at Barnes & Noble, something that I both love and hate. So that being said, like Emily Henry is wildly popular, but her books are so different than Tessa Bailey. Emily Henry writes the book version of 90s rom-coms. Tessa Bailey writes the book version of 2000s rom-coms. They just are. Emily Henry's, they're much more emotionally weighted. There's a lot more slice of life. There's a lot more depth. Realistic dialogue. Like I said, slice of life. It's much more natural lighting. You're going to get sort of a swath of someone's lifetime, like a chunk of the pie, more than a hyper-focused, hyper-stylized, specific view of just the one romance plot. Emily Henry's not like that. Slice of life, realistic, 90s. But Tessa Bailey is early 2000s rom-coms. High-key lighting, they are hyper stylized, they are like super zeroed in on the romance specifically. Everything else is very much in the background. Her characters are much less realistic. I mean, they're still real characters and they're very well-rounded characters, but they're also a little bit in the extreme. So if they're silly, they're like really silly, and if they are very serious, they're a little bit more serious, right? And so they're just a little bit more exaggerated, not extreme, they're exaggerated characters. Her books are also a little bit stylized too, and where that comes across and like where the colorful aspects comes across is in her settings. The settings are very much a part of the vibe of the book. So for example, the It Happened One Summer duology, it's getting a movie, by the way, you should look it up. That takes place in like a seaside town, and it really feels that way. The love interest of the main character is a fisherman, and the main character is very much an influencer kind of girly pop. So her journey is into appreciating this seaside town. And even though the whole thing is very gray, it's not dreary. And the town has a lot of charm and it has a lot of history too, but you have to sort of have this grit and tenacity and sense of permanency and stubbornness in order to appreciate the town itself. And so in this way, the town and the setting is very much part of that duology in general, and she writes that really well. Completely separately, the Secretly Yours and Unfortunately Yours duology, which I'll also talk about in a minute, those take place in Napa Valley, California. So the whole book feels like it's like a wash in this like late afternoon California glow. And it has that vibe too, where time doesn't move very quickly. Everyone is kind of on that like luxurious vacation feel. It really makes you feel like, what would the lives be of the people who live here? Where this is just like a few days of some of the most like relaxing and luxurious vacations in America. What is it like for the people who just live in this sort of like slow days wine haze? Funny. And so like that's very much part of the tone of the book and how it affects the characters, and you can see the color through the whole thing. And then this book that I'm about to talk about takes place on a vacation on Cape Cod, and so that really plays into the vibe of this book. It plays into how the characters interact with each other. It plays into not just like what they're wearing, because the main character is constantly running around in like a beach cover-up because she's on vacation. Like, how does the seaside aspect and the vacation aspect and temporary aspect of Cape Cod kind of come into play with how the characters relate to each other? And I can't explain it, but Tessa Bailey can, and she does it with all of her books, and that is why I love her books. I'm just really in my Tessa Bailey era right now, and I really want you to know about it. The setting for each of her books and each of her duologies or series are very much part of the tone of the book, the way that they're written and crafted, and that's why they feel stylized, because they are. And that is why I like Tessa Bailey and her vibes so much more from how you can appreciate an Emily Henry book. Also, Tessa Bailey writes spice, like really good spice. That's really important. I think it's really important. Okay, so this book, the first book that I'm going to talk about by Tessa Bailey is My Killer Vacation, and it's a pretty recent release. It was hard to get my hands on a physical copy, even though I read it on my Kindle. It's very in demand. So the premise is that this 1 or 2 week vacation in Cape Cod was supposed to be a really good vacation and relaxing getaway for Taylor, our main character, and her brother, until she discovers a dead body crammed between the washer and dryer of her Airbnb. That's how we start the book, but then a dark and brooding bounty hunter arrives on the scene to find the killer, and Taylor is determined to assist him in this endeavor, even though he does not want her around, and she cites her true crime enthusiasm for experience. You very much get all of those aspects of grumpy sunshine, forced proximity, enemies to lovers, because like he is very much that whole like I work alone bullshit, and she's like I think a kindergarten teacher, you know, and she's just like feels very connected to this crime because she's the one who found the body. So she's like, I'm invested and I'm going to participate, even though there are attempts on her life throughout the book, because she is kind of on to some things. It has all those vibes. It's very fun, and you feel like you have sand between your toes the whole time you're reading it. And then I read Secretly Yours and Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey, and they both take place in Napa Valley, California. So the first book, Secretly Yours, follows Hallie. She is a gardener, and she is hired to spruce up the estate of one of the most prominent vineyards and winemakers in all of Napa. And it's also the childhood home of Julian, who is a boy that she almost kissed when they were like in college a decade ago. And so he moved away and now he's just moved back. He's on sabbatical and he's like at home to write his novel or whatever. So they have a super cute romance because Hallie is very impulsive, chronically late. She's always dirty, covered in like dirt and gardening soil, and she's usually surrounded by several large, slobbery, loud dogs. And Julian is very buttoned up, and he manages his high anxiety by being very structured, very manicured, very on time, and like rigid. And so obviously you've got that whole opposites attract thing. It's real cute, but it is somewhat, I won't say undermined by, but definitely distracted by a pretty unnecessary, in my opinion, subplot in which a drunken Hallie leaves an anonymous love note for Julian in the middle of a tree, and then he finds it. I didn't think it needed it, but Tessa Bailey's books do play up a lot of those classic rom-com tropes, and so if that whole like pining for a lost love that never was thing is your vibe, then you might like it. And then I read Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. This one also takes place in Napa Valley, California, and it follows Natalie, Julian's sister. Natalie is a badass Wall Street business investor who is returning home after a failed calculated risk in which she lost her own company and her engagement to like a Wall Street business guy. So she's returning home to help run her family's estate and help return it to its former glory. And while she's there, she gets tangled up with an ex-military man who decided to retire and becomes like somehow the worst winemaker in all of Napa. Like his drinks are notorious, his wine is notorious for being like shit. I know that I'm being light on details and somewhat glib about this book, and that is because literally none of the tropes in this book resonate with me. First of all, too many startling statistics prevent me from ever being able to find military men attractive. Two, I do not believe in personal like self-sacrifice on any level, but especially when it's for a deceased friend. That's a major theme in this book and I can't get behind it. Third, and most importantly, I will personally never root for a badass businesswoman who chooses to like give it all up and return to a home that she spent an entire childhood yearning to escape from. Couldn't be me. So I fully acknowledge and recognize that this is truly a matter of opinion and not what I think that others will like or appreciate in a story, because the entire Hallmark channel presents a pretty strong argument against me. But that being said, it is a matter of personal preference, and I really didn't like this one as much as Secretly Yours or as much as any other Tessa Bailey book. But that being said, I don't think that it is worse than her other books. I don't think her other books are necessarily better than this one. Truly, I just didn't like the elements of this book. Lore Olympus Volume 4 by Rachel Smythe. So there is no way that you have not heard me talk about this series. Unless you're new here, in which case, hi, hello. Welcome. Please pick up your copy of Lore Olympus by the door because we have to talk about it. I love this series. I love this series so much. It is a cozy, also it's a beautiful story. Like I cannot talk about it without mentioning that it is art of like my favorite colors altogether. They're bright and whimsical and the art style is adorable, and it's just read it. See it, experience it. Love it. It is simply a fun and cute graphic novel and story about Persephone. She's just trying to get out from under her mother's thumb. Her mother wants her to join the Goddesses of Eternal Maidenhood, which is like code for like a virgin for life. And it's also like in this story, the Greek equivalent of a nunnery. But she's the fertility goddess and her mom has kept this information from her whole life. So this story, in addition to being a love story, obviously Hades and Persephone, it's also about Persephone sort of discovering the amount of her power and that it is truly connected to fertility and banging and being cool in her own sexuality, and we love to see it. Now, it is super cute, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some serious subject matter. But this book deals with it in just the most respectful and authentic way, while still telling a mostly joyous and cozy story. As always, I highly recommend any of the Lore Olympus books. Number 4 was really great. I'm in Love with Mothman by Paige Lavoie. I hope that I'm saying her name right. I picked this book up at BookNet Fest, which was here in Orlando a few weeks ago. So I am fascinated and have been fascinated by the trend of monster romances that I've seen not just on the Kindle Unlimited and self-pub and indie publishing, but like trad publishing and in bookstores in general. Like, they're everywhere. And I've just been really interested and intrigued by that, even though I haven't been drawn to it. And I have watched several really interesting and insightful booktubers, book talkers, book bloggers in general just talk about why they're such a different and unique subgenre. They're actually much lower stakes. They usually have cinnamon roll characters. They're usually cozier than other darker romances, and there's a lot more insta-love. There's a lot more like actual lovey-dovey romance fluff than in other subgenre romances. And I think that that's really interesting and unique. This book is about a burnt out social media influencer who decides to go completely offline. She turns off her social media accounts and moves to a cabin in the woods in Ohio. And that is where she encounters a monster who falls onto her roof during a storm, and romance ensues. It's not slice of life. It is very much like romance centric, but it really has those cozy Studio Ghibli vibes where it's just about them in a vacuum, you know, with not a lot of other things going on. But one thing that I really did love about it was that the main character has Hashimoto's, and so that was cool, but it was really cute. And if this is your thing, highly recommend this book. It was a very cute and sweet story. And once again, I caved to book talk pressure and read Haunting Adeline. I cannot express how much I hated this book. So if you don't already know, this is a creepy, atmospheric story about a woman falling in love with her stalker and also trying and failing miserably at trying to solve the murder of her great grandmother in the same Victorian home that she's living in now from like almost 100 years ago. I'm not going to spend much time on this book because, like I said, I loathed this book and its sequel, which I did read because I thought it would get better. I don't know why I thought that. This author tried to write in the voice of a great grandmother during the 30s and 40s, and yet somehow it sounded exactly like the head of our protagonist. Like, why was the great grandmother in this Victorian home, who was fearing for her life and yet also fallen for her stalker named Ronaldo, why was she phrasing things like some like bubblegum popping girly pop from 2020? Like, made no sense. Third thing, very unsexy spice. I understand that the appeal of this book, it appeals to a very specific demographic who are really all about that obsessive, like, bad guy trope. In my opinion, even if that's what you're into, this book doesn't deliver on that. It's just very weird. He's like super fucking obsessed with her, but they don't interact a whole lot, and when they do, the spice is just not hot. Super spoiler, if you are gonna pick this book up, don't listen to anything I have to say next, but like the graphic sex in here, it is not like, we're not gonna go into kink, right, and talk about the difference between dubcon, CNC. We're not gonna like talk about all those and like why this is literally none of those. It's just straight up sexual assault. But I will say, like, the one, like the scene that everyone refers to involves a gun, a loaded gun, and places where like a loaded gun shouldn't be. And like all I can think about is like, girl, that's how you're gonna get a UTI. Aside from the fact that you may not survive this sexual encounter that is very non-consensual, the spice was so unspicy. It was like milk. The second book was so bad. The second book was just straight up torture porn. That's all that it was. In the second book, once again, spoiler, if you don't want to know, skip ahead to the next book. She was just sold into sex trafficking, which is every woman's worst nightmare. There is nothing redeeming, appealing, sexy. She's just constantly tortured. It's not cute. It's not funny. Well, it's like, why are we reading this? It just felt like the weird exhibitionist like attraction. I'm not a true crime enthusiast by any means. I can't stand true crime, but like, it's like someone is watching or reading true crime, but from the perspective of the victim. It's incredibly like stomach churning, nerve-wracking experience. I don't understand the appeal. I don't get it. Very much not for me, very much terrible. But also through the whole thing, you're like waiting for like the guy to rescue her, and it's like, you had us in 550 something pages in the first one, convinced us that this man has no other purpose for being alive other than this woman. That is how obsessive of a stalker he is. Like, in the second book, it's like, bro, you had one job. You're a stalker. You have one job. Why is it taking you 80% of the way through this tome to like find your girl. You're a stalker, right? You have one job. So many other people have like really torn it apart. I'm like in the middle of watching the Weirdo Book Club. I think her name is Natalie. I don't know. She was also at BookNet Fest, which is kind of cool. But like she made like a 2-hour video about it, and I'm savoring that video and just like watching it in small chunks. So my point is, so many other people have talked about this book. So many other people can like talk about it better than I can and more in depth with more nuance and insight, because like all I can and will say about this book is that I don't understand its appeal truly. This is not a jab at the dark romance community. I read a lot of dark romance books, but this wasn't it. This didn't even fall into the categories and the tropes that it said that it was. It was somehow outside of and worse of those. Worse than those. I don't get it. Someone explain it to me, but then also don't, because I don't want to talk about this book anymore. The Nanny by Lana Ferguson. This one is fairly straightforward. It's a recent release about a young woman who becomes a live-in nanny for a problematic 9-year-old and then falls for the child's single father. I kind of don't know what else to say about this book, because that's all that there was. How do you describe a 500-page romance novel with zero chemistry? It felt like bad fan fiction of a porno, is what it felt like, because there was no writing dedicated to character development. There was no writing dedicated to a plot of any kind. Their character names might as well have been the nanny and the dad, because that was how we saw them through the whole book. That being said, like, why was the book so long? I mean, it does tell you exactly what to expect on the back of the book. You know, like what I said, the live-in nanny starts to fall for the single dad. So like maybe it's my fault for like expecting or assuming that the book would give me something to discover, but no, that was the whole plot of the book. It's literally just through her lens, watching this single dad try to learn how to balance work and being a single dad. And she's just like, oh my God, look at him trying, as if millions of single mothers haven't already fucking perfected that without praise and admiration of the opposite sex for hashtag look at him go. Like, look at him just try. Isn't that cute? Like, he's kind of fucking it up, and he does kind of have like a problem child, and like he is kind of like banging his nanny, which isn't like super great with the distribution of power, like whatever, but like look at him try be a single dad. Is that hot? Are we doing this? Really? Literally the bar is in hell. The entirety of their spice, of their like hookups, was just them having that like awkward middle of the night, I'm just in the kitchen for a drink of water, but both of them are in various stages of undress. That same scene happened 3 times. Could have been 4. This just wasn't it. And I rated it 2 stars. And finally, I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This book is also everywhere. For why? So this book is about a figure skater who is very dedicated to her craft. Naturally, it requires a lot of dedication. And a hockey player who enjoys being like the dad/big brother role to his hockey team. That's what the book is about. It's about those 2 people. If you are also looking for like the hook or the premise or like the okay but and, then me too. And I read it. This one single book read like this series of a teen drama. It felt like watching a season of like the OC. I don't know. I never watched teen dramas, so that was really bad reference. Bad on me. Maybe Gilmore Girls would be more like this book. And there's nothing else going on except for the highly dramatic lives of these 2 like mostly privileged people. There wasn't one major central conflict theme. There was just like little mini conflicts throughout, and then those conflicts would get resolved like 2 pages later. We never really discover why these 2 characters are romantically interested in each other. We understand superficially only why they are attracted to each other, and that's literally just because of the extremely fit bodies that their respective sports gives them. So her being a figure skater, she is naturally very small, and him being a hockey player, he is naturally very big. And so that is why they are in love. But also, why were they attracted to each other? They never talked about anything. Everything was topical. The only conversations they had were about literally what was right in front of them. What is her schedule for the week? What's the big test that she has coming up? What is she eating right now in front of her or not eating? Why do I know more about what she has eaten this week than like what she wants to be when she grows up? I rated this one 2 stars. I don't understand the hype. I think I may just like stop getting my book recommendations from Book Talk altogether, because I don't trust you guys anymore. You and I are on a break. If you are part of the Haunting Adeline crowd or the Icebreaker crowd, then you and I we're just going to take some space. We're just going to do our own thing for a little while. I still want you in my life. You just don't need that much influence over me and over my TBR. And I think we're both going to be better for it. So that's what we've got for today, some highs and lows of contemporary romance. I would truly love to know what you thought of a lot of the books that I mentioned, even and especially if you disagree with me. So I know that I gave a lot of hot and cold takes today. I do, but I really do like taking in alternative, serious alternative perspectives. And then as always, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you loved it, hit subscribe. And of course, there's always Instagram. But take care. And as always, happy reading.